Yes, you got the encoder. Everything looks like it's up.
No.
I'm waiting on YouTube to catch up. You can go.
All right. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Here.
Mr. Bateman?
Here.
Mr. Blair?
Here.
Mr. Hart?
Here.
Mr. Ori?
Here.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Here.
Mr. Ping?
Here.
Welcome, everyone. We are joined here tonight by our Director of Finance, Mark Medler, our Clerk of Council, Misty Clark, our City Manager, Dave Kennedy, City Solicitor, Joe Braun, our City Engineer, Cindy Kloffenstein, who honor to have tonight, and our Chief of Police, Michael Gabrielson. And we have former council members Todd Osborne and Pat Mays. Welcome, everyone. Who did I forget?
The AV.
Oh, for God's sake. That guy. Well, you were a little slow getting us up, so I just sort of. And our Assistant City Manager, Corey Wright. What in the world? How did I just pass that up? Sorry about that. All right, so welcome, everyone. Glad to have you here. First up is recognition of Safety Director Sue Matson. So, Sue, will you join us? You go ahead.
So, well, I guess you know that Chief Ray, when he retired, I was in a bit of a panic mode because I didn't have anyone to fill in. And I want to first give kudos to sort of what the connection that Joe has to all the different communities, because I went from panic mode all the way home to the problem pretty much being solved the next morning by Joe when he mentioned to me that Sue could step in and help the city. And I reached out at the time to a gentleman. He's actually the police chief of Blue Ash, who on my panic home got a voicemail from me saying, "Is there anything you can do to help? I need somebody quick." And next morning, he called to answer my panic mode, and I said, "Oh, I got it all taken care of. Sue Matson's going to come help me." He goes, "Oh, geez, how'd you pull that out?" I go, "Joe Braun did it." And he goes, "Well, you only got one problem with her. You're not going to want her to leave." Never has there been more truer words spoken than what the police chief of Blue Ash said to me when he said, "You're never going to want her to see her leave." There's a couple ways you can do this when you come in to help somebody out on a contractual basis. You can do the bare minimum, keep the ship afloat, fill out the payroll, make sure everything's going, and just get your check and go back to the farm. And when I mean that, that's literally what she does. She goes back to the farm. And that's not, and then there's the Sue way of doing it. All in, 100%, showing up at Amazing Race, being coning off roads during parades. One of my favorite residents, Sheila Wheatley, called me one day and she said, "So I sent your acting police chief an email about how I'd like to meet her. Next thing I know, she showed up at my house." Okay, this is not someone who's trying for the police chief job. She didn't want it, but she every way. Not to mention that probably the most important thing was what she did to help us through the police chief search. I think the one thing everybody knows, and everyone was on the committee, that was an important job I took that seriously, so did everyone. And to get it right was key. It was very important. Police talk a different language, and Sue had a way of sort of bringing it all back home. Now, Dave, this is really what you're getting. Dave, are you really getting this? And I think we landed Chief Gabrielson largely from the guidance that I got from Sue to keep that ship going. So I can't say enough about all she did and how much she helped us. And that's really all I got to say, Sue. Just thank you. You really helped me out. You helped the city out, and you did it in a professional, classy way from day one until you finally never come back. So thank you. So as you all saw when I jumped over the garbage can, I'm not a hugger. So
sure, just real quickly. To echo Mr. Kennedy, absolutely fantastic job. Thank you so much for everything you did. she definitely set some things in motion that we have continued. And to say that she jumped in and this wasn't just a retirement thing that's just an understatement. Everything that she did and has continued. When I started August 1st, she could have just disappeared, but absolutely not. What can I do for you? What can I help? She stepped up with the Ohio Collaborative, which is a lot of paperwork and proofs and proving all the things that we do every day. And of course, I didn't turn her down. I said, absolutely, please. So she's still in there processing paperwork for us and keeping us in line with the collaborative. I will say one thing, though. When I got here, she started to, I retired for just a few days before I took the job here. She went on a couple of nice vacations where I started the first couple of weeks. I was like, geez, maybe retirement wasn't maybe I should have maybe thought about retirement, because she was going on these fantastic vacations, but then she always came back and jumped right back in, and she's still there. So I just can't thank you enough. The men and women from the police department can't thank you enough. And believe me, in that short period of time that she was here, big shoes to fill already. Everybody was absolutely just fantastic job. So thank you from me.
On first. I'm probably going to repeat a little. So we were in a bit of a bind and panicking a little bit, because we suddenly found ourselves needing an interim police chief much more quickly than we thought we would. And we didn't want just a warm body. We wanted somebody that our residents deserved and our officers deserved. And I think we all feel like we hit the jackpot, because you certainly never acted like a short-termer. You threw yourself into the department, the city, the community, all in 100%, more than we ever could have dreamed of. We are forever will be grateful for your professionalism, your expertise, your personality, your enthusiasm, for everything you brought to this position. You were only here for a short time, but I think we're all better for you having been here. So thank you very much for everything you did for us. We are very appreciative. We have that for you.
Well, thank you very much. This is very humbling. And more importantly, I want to thank Mayor Bailey and Council for having the trust and have given me the support over these past few months. It's been amazing to work in Loveland. I've had the opportunity I feel like I've hopped around Claremont County, and to land here has been very nice. The citizens, I can't say enough great things about the people that I've met, the support that I've seen from Mr. Kennedy, from Corey Wright, from Mark Medler, each person. Misty, every time I walk in her office, she would make me laugh and let me know that this is still a great place. So thank you, everyone, for your support. And you are right. You are left with, I feel like I'm the pinch hitter. I'm that backup quarterback. You have got your quarterback. And I can't say enough great things about him, because this is the face who's going to lead Loveland's police department to that next level. And I congratulate him for taking that opportunity, coming down here, being patient with the process. And he's here tonight. So congratulations. This is who it's about. I'm just fading into the back, but thank you so very much for the opportunity to be here with you.
We got your picture.
Picture. Well, she want to keep taking
Hi. Good, how are you?
You bet. Thank you for everything.
Thank you so much.
On to your next adventure.
Yeah, enjoy. Enjoy.
Me too.
All right, next we have a proclamation. We were asked to do. Whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection report that cancer is the leading cause of death by disease among U.S. children between infancy and age 15. This tragic disease is detected in nearly 16,000 of our country's young people each and every year. And whereas 1 in 5 of our nation's children loses his or her battle with cancer, many infants, children, and teens will suffer from long-term effects of comprehensive treatment, including secondary cancers. An estimated 400,000 children and adolescents are diagnosed with cancer globally each year. And whereas nearly 30 years ago, by Stephen Firestein, a member of the philanthropic Max Factor Cosmetics family, the American Cancer Fund for Children, Inc., and Kids Cancer Connection, Inc., along with Lions Club International, are dedicated to helping these children and their families. And whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection provide a variety of vital patient psychosocial services to children undergoing cancer treatment at Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus, Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center, Dayton Children's Hospital, Shriners Children's Ohio in Dayton, as well as participating hospitals throughout the country, thereby enhancing the quality of life for these children and their families. Whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection also sponsor toy distributions, family sailing programs, pet-assisted therapy, Laughter Noon, Laughter is Healing, KCC Supercar Experience, positive appearance programs, and hospital celebrations in honor of a child's determination and bravery to fight the battle against childhood cancer. Now, therefore, I, Kathy Bailey, by the power vested in me as mayor and on behalf of the City of Loveland and Loveland City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of September 25th through October 1st, 2022 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Week in the City of Loveland and encourage residents to support programs that bring awareness to childhood cancers and diseases. Thank you. All right, next we have persons appearing before council. We have Bob Kaler, and I believe Mr. Vice Mayor Phelps has the introduction.
Sure. Thanks, Bob, for being here. Bob is the Deputy Executive Director of the Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana Regional Council of Governments, and I've had the privilege on behalf of the city to be one of the representatives from this community to that body. I've seen Bob in action. He does a fabulous job. He's juggling a lot of projects at all times, but also has to make serves at the pleasure of the board and has a staff that I know helps him do what he does. For benefit of council members as well as the public, just a quick primer on the Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana Regional Governments Organization. It is a council of governments and businesses and other community groups that are committed to collaborating and developing strategies to improve the quality of life in our region and economic vitality. It's got 118 or 20 members. I can't remember. 100.
I'll cover that.
Yeah. Okay. And really what OKI may be best known for is it has been designated as a regional authority here that controls or has the ability to approve federal dollars that usually flow from the Washington to surface transportation, so roads, bridges, sidewalks, bike paths as well, and they do studies. And Bob's been privileged to be project manager for multiple transportation studies in the region. He is a registered professional engineer, has a bachelor's of science in civil engineering from the University of Kentucky. He's married, and he and his wife live in Batavia Township in Claremont County. And I couldn't help but think, there's some multi-jurisdictional interests and parallels between who you work for and who we work for, in that Loveland's in 3 counties. Obviously, OKI has its tentacles in all 3 states. So with that introduction, I just want to say thank you for coming here. Thanks for talking to us a little more about OKI, and appreciate your service.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me tonight. It's nice to be here. If I can get this mouse to work. There we go. just at a glance, what I'm going to talk about tonight, give you some highlights that Ted didn't already cover about OKI. And really, we do a lot of work, but what I think is our most valuable asset is the fact that we have funding for projects for our member government. So I'm going to spend most of my time talking about that. All right. OKI at a glance, as Mr. Phelps mentioned, we are a tri-state entity. We were formed back in 1964, and we have a very large contingency of member governments, 196 jurisdictions. We serve Southwest Ohio, the counties of Hamilton, Butler, Warren, and Claremont. And in Northern Kentucky, we have Boone, Kenton, and Campbell, and then our lone Indiana county of Dearborn. And what makes OKI tick is that we are the governing body of federal transportation dollars. And through that, about $500 million are approved every year. And of that, we have $50 to $60 million each year that we ourselves allocate directly to communities. Our board is 118 members strong, and most of those folks are elected officials. In fact, about 2/3 of those folks come from communities such as this. The neat thing about OKI is that we operate by consensus. I'm a staff member there. Our board meets, generally speaking, every month. Generally, they do take off July and August, and sometimes in December. So other than that, we meet on a regular basis and conduct the business of the council. And you might ask, what is the business of the council? Well, a couple different things. OKI is a metropolitan planning organization. It does those things that I mentioned in regards to the funding, but also we are responsible for making sure the federal process is followed. And principally speaking, the federal process involves developing and leading the development of a long-range transportation plan, a 20-year horizon. But we also, maybe more importantly, have a short-range element to that plan, which is the programmatic process of funding actual projects. These are real projects with real money, with real timelines, et cetera, et cetera. So the plan and the TIP are two very important things that we deal in. We also have done through the years many different special studies. We've provided technical assistance to communities, traffic counts, traffic engineering in the past, a little bit less of that now. Other planning elements that your communities may need. We also delve into regional council of government activities that you see on the right-hand side of that slide, which involves regional planning, water quality, and other green space planning activities. In Ohio, OKI is the keeper of what's known as the 208 plan. Now, if you're a fan of old federal regulations, 208 was the water quality legislation that the feds had to lay somewhere, and it fell on the MPOs in Ohio to carry out that obligation. And it has to do with where wastewater treatment facilities are sited and so on and so forth. I won't go much into that, but we do maintain that plan. And I did mention that one of the things I enjoy most about my job is our annual call for projects, where we give money out on a competitive basis for projects. This year we had actually closer to $67 million to allocate, and that money goes to roads, transit, bike, ped, and freight type projects. One thing you need to remember when you're asking for OKI funds is to know what you want, have a plan for it, have a good cost estimate, and have your local match. Local match is critical. Sometimes I get, Bob, well, how, I really got this great project, and how do we get it moving forward? I said, well, do you have a local match? Well, we already did our budget this year, and we didn't allocate anything for it. So that automatically kicks them to the next cycle. So think about those things. You have to plan ahead. We plan ahead, so we expect our communities to do the same. And getting through the federal process can be a little tedious. You'll shake your head sometimes, but it's not my fault. I've just pledged to carry these projects through the process and get them done. And in actuality, our Ohio communities will end up going through ODOT. So if you win OKI funds, the actual oversight agency will be the Ohio Department of Transportation, the district office. Thankfully, those folks at the district are really good. They know their stuff. So anyway, don't be afraid of the federal process. I often tell people if they're small projects and you're thinking in your head, what's a small project? Well, for me, it would have to be at least $500,000 or higher to go through the federal process. If you've got something less, now there are definitely exceptions to that, but something less than that, you can go faster without going through the federal process. You see some acronyms up there on the screen, STBG, that's Surface Transportation Block Groups. TA is Transportation Alternatives. 5310 and a couple of new programs, carbon reduction, safe routes for something or other. I don't know all the acronyms yet. Safe routes for all. And some other BIL is the name of the bill, the new highway or transportation bill that was signed into law last November. So move along to this little table you see, and I understand that a copy of the presentation was given to council. So you have the advantage of, sorry audience, I don't have any extra copies. So you have the advantage of, being able to catch up on this later. But basically the Ohio SDBG is our most flexible and it has the most funding in there. Now, the one thing that I need to tell you for your future reference is in Ohio, we expect our communities to do design work ahead of time. We don't pay for that. And the reason we don't is because it allows us to have these dollars that we have implemented into utilities, right of way, and construction. That's where we want our dollars spent. Sometimes we find ourselves in a bind in Northern Kentucky where we do still fund design work, and communities will sometimes get through design work and have spent federal dollars and we've got nothing to show for it. I'm going to have to probably put an end to that because, we can't have dollars spent and have nothing to show for it. The reason I did it to begin with was because the state had done everything for those communities for so many years that they never built up any expertise. No in-house, no, general knowledge of how to deliver a federal project. In Ohio, it's different, and you do have the advantage of working with the Ohio DOT. So when you come to us, we're happy to fund right-of-way, utilities, and construction of projects. So let me move on. You see there the eligible applicants. You're a city, so you don't really have to go any further than that, but do know that there are whole lists of other agencies that you compete with. And you're wondering, well, what do I need to get a project through OKI? There you see the list. It's got to be consistent with our plan or specifically listed in it. A roadway project needs to be in the urbanized boundary, which Loveland is. It needs to be on a functionally classified roadway. We can't use federal funds on local streets. So things like Main Street out here would be eligible, Loveland, Madeira, other routes in the area. Bike and pedestrian facilities, obviously they're not roads, so they can be anywhere, so long as they're open to the public and public benefit. In fact, this round you guys did submit one, and the early indications are that probably do okay. Remains to be seen. I can't speak for the board. They always have the right to discard staff recommendations, but right now it looks like it's going to go forward. Let me continue on this. Just a little bit of stuff about how many applications. You can apply for 2 STBG and 1 transportation alternative grant. The maximum amount we have for construction or for projects is $8 million under STBG and $1 million for TA. So kind of need to know those kind of things. There's the urban boundary, that brown blob. You're fine there. Eligible STB type projects. I'm not going to go into all the details, and I do have more slides in here, so you have the advantage of looking later. But just a synopsis of the types of projects that we can fund with this program: new roadways, widened roadways, signalization, access management, safety improvements. Then there are transit capital projects like buses and BRT and rail projects, if we wanted to fund those, would be eligible. Bicycle and pedestrian facilities, and then intermodal freight projects. And we get one of those about every 3 years. But we like them because they actually take a lot of trucks off our roadways to free up and do less wear and tear on our system. Kind of looks like this. We have a whole bunch of factors that go into this process, but know that there's a separate process for each one of these. There's a modal element, and then there's this planning factors where it looks at, the community's makeup, how their plans look. And I want to mention that one too. If you have a comprehensive plan and it's up to date and it specifically identifies the transportation project that you apply for from OKI, it takes it to a higher level. You get more points in our system for things like that. So let me move on. There's a few tables here, and I won't dwell on them quickly, but as you can imagine in your mind, you're sitting there, what would I use to evaluate roadway projects? Well, safety, congestion, travel time, the condition of the roadway itself, how much freight it's carrying, how many trucks are on there, so on and so forth. And we also like to see projects that are further down the road if possible. If you have a project that does not require right-of-way, you guys love that. We love that. There are less unknowns about your project. Especially these days when you have a lot of out-of-town property owners, out on some of the main streets that we deal with. They're corporate, they're from Houston, they're from everywhere else, and trying to consolidate right away for your project, not to me, but for the project applicant, that can be a nightmare. So having that stuff ahead of time can really speed up your process and make it more attractive to us. For transit projects, if you ever did want to submit a transit project, you would probably, I don't know what you'd do, but anyway, there is a separate application process for that. Deals with ridership, deals with safety for the users, so on and so forth. We'll stop there on that one. Transportation factors for bicycle and pedestrian. I know Loveland really does take its considerations to bike and ped projects actually to another level. In fact, I think I've been through Loveland more times on the trail than I've ever been in a car. Took me a little bit of time to get my bearings straight because I'm used to coming up the trail. Doing marathon training, I would always park down in Milford and run up here and go north of town just a little ways and turn around. So I always thought it would be nice to stop at that little place up there with the fire pit, in the fall, have a beer, and then finish my run. But I didn't have the guts to do that. But anyway, you see the bike ped factors there. We're looking for things that improve the safety for bicyclists and pedestrians. If you have a situation where it's unsafe and you have a project that addresses that safety, then of course it scores well. If you have gaps in your system, we'd love to see those filled in and made continuous so you can actually get somewhere from point A to B, because we are in fact talking about transportation. These are transportation dollars. Even though this trail out here is both transportation and recreation and fitness, it does a lot in terms of transportation, and it's not just recreation. So we covet those types of projects. Existing surface conditions, it's self-explanatory. Complete streets, that's a fancy way of saying try to be as considerate of all the modes as you possibly can. Now, some people go to extremes, and I'm not one of them, but some streets can only do so much. I mean, you might have a road that can accommodate trucks and cars, but there's simply no place for other modes, and that's okay. There are other roads where we have opportunities to consider all the modes, and we should do that where we can, and we encourage that. We don't kick people out because not every mode is considered nor a complete street, but we do like to see it where it's logical and feasible. Project status, again, we're looking for things that are further down the road, if you will, towards being able to be completed. And then the next one, non-roadway freight. I'm not going to talk about that much, but we have funded a couple intermodal, which one was kind of interesting. It was a crane facility down on the Ohio River, which would allow the facility to offload from the barge directly to a train and move freight in and out that way without having loads and loads of trucks coming onto, in this case, US 52 down there. Planning factors is the other half of the equation. Remember in that graphic, it was the modal side and there was planning side. Here you see those. We're looking for things like positive impacts on air quality, how it works with the other modes. We covet projects that maintain or replace the existing conditions before building new. Local share is an element. Typically, the minimum is 20%. We also like to see projects that bring new technologies or new material types to it. And not everything has to be technical in terms of, electronics or something. But let's say you might have a new bridge type. I'm just making this up, but this super duper high polymer plastic bridge that is 1/2 the price and lasts 3 times longer than concrete or steel. We'd be all in for that. You would get points in that kind of thing. And the history of project delivery. When we program projects, we expect people to deliver them, and when they don't, they get penalized the next time they come through. Then the other column there, environmental justice, that has to do with low income and minority and elderly populations, zero car households, and folks like that. We want to try to, make sure we don't overlook people that need transportation options. Then the other 3 things, I'll just leave that out. I kind of talked on some of those things already anyway. And then transportation alternatives is the next one. I'm going to leave this, pretty much. Well, I'll just go ahead and talk about it. This is mostly speaking towards non-motorized type projects. In other words, bicycle, pedestrian. There are some other things that are eligible. If you really want to get into the weeds on that, I can. But anyway, it's, again, a 2-part process, the modal and the planning factors. Planning factors are exactly the same as what you just saw. The elements of a project that could work, the ones on the right-hand side of that I didn't talk about. Mostly people think of the things in the left-hand column, and those are the types of projects that we most often get. Sidewalks, bike paths, things of that nature. But we're happy to look at everything that's eligible. There are the factors and the points scheme. I'm not going to talk about those. Planning factors, that's the same as before, just in a different format. Share, air quality, intermodal connections, so on and so forth. Economic vitality is one of those things. Also, that if you have a plan, let's just say that you had 10 acres and you needed to improve a functionally classified roadway. It might be to widen because of expected traffic demand. That would be an eligible project. And if that site brought new employment or new investment, you might earn points in our process. You would have to be able to demonstrate that, but it's one of those things in economic vitality that will earn you some points in our system. So that's that. And I apologize, this is a little hard to read, even on the paper version, but I recently had someone put this together for me, and since 2010, that's what the heading says. This is how the funding breaks out for projects that we have actually selected and allocated funds to. The thinnest one is freight at the top, middle of the road, bike ped, almost $98 million. Some people like to rag on Bob and or other elements of OKI about not being as bike friendly as maybe they want me to be. I think we're very fair. $98 million since 2010 is a lot of money. Traffic operations, buses, widening and relocation. Roadways, yeah, they get a lot of money, but there's a lot of need there. And they carry in the OKI region about 98% of the vehicle miles that travel, 98% of the trips. So that's how we've invested our money in the past. Some new things on the horizon that are part of the new infrastructure bill that Congress passed and the president signed. They lean towards complete streets. They lean towards vehicle charging, electric vehicle charging, or alternative fuels. So if you have any of those in your mind that you'd like to advance, there are some new programs in this new infrastructure, as well as these existing programs that we already have that would be eligible for something like that. The law has what's called a Nevi, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Act, and that is being rolled out by ODOT in Ohio and KYTC in Kentucky and NDOT in Indiana. They'll take care of the interstate system first with high-level fast charging. If you know anything about electric vehicle charging, it's slow, which you might have in your garage. It takes about 8 hours to charge a regular car battery. And then there's the mid-level, which takes maybe a few hours. And then there's DC fast charging. And that will take, depending on how much of charge you need, 20 to 40 minutes or so. And the states are handling that. But after they satisfy that interstate, every 50-mile kind of requirement, they'll roll out to other places. So begin to think about those kinds of things. If you want it, get in line quickly. And by the way, OKI has received some funding called the Carbon Reduction Program. And it's a little bit like our CMAQ program. And it's intended to reduce carbon emissions. So we'll be rolling that out, Corey, to the ICC. And you guys might know that Corey is your representative to the ICC, OKI's technical committee. And we had him when he was at Claremont County. And we liked him so much, we begged him to stay on through the rest of his term. And I'm glad that his boss, Mr. Kennedy, let him stay on. So he's doing a good job, just in case you want to know.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the point where I tell you what the takeaways are. We do planning work. It's mostly in transportation, although we do some, regional planning and green space and water quality and those types of things. We try to help as much as we can and whenever we can. And we have money for your projects. So plan ahead, get your match, get your projects designed. And we have a call for projects every year. It kicks off in March. And we go over changes for the year and how much money we have. And that's when the applications become available. And those applications aren't that difficult to fill out. They're due, they have been for the last several years, the first Friday in June. So mid-March to the first Friday in June. And then we take the summer at the staff level to review. And we're at the point now, next month we'll be taking these projects from this past March to our board for adoption. So it's kind of a March to October cycle every year. And so there you have it. Let me leave you with one thing. And what you really need for a successful project at OKI are three things. You need political support, you need public support, and you need local match. You guys decide what are good projects. I don't pick projects. I don't, say you got to do this, that, or the other. It's kind of a bottom-up approach at OKI. And so as long as it's eligible, we'll put it through our scoring system and see how it pans out. I can't guarantee anything, but I can guarantee you anything but a fair and open process. And I'll stop there and see if you have any questions. And again, thank you for letting me be here.
Yeah. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't give Corey credit for I think reaching out to you so that you're here tonight. And we're glad he's here for multiple reasons, including his work for OKI or with OKI already. Thanks.
Anybody have any questions? Mr. Blair?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for taking the time for this.
Sure.
It's greatly appreciated. If you look at the size, geography of the OKI, and if you look at, and then the map that you shared with us that shows the amount of all of that geography that's urbanized area.
Right.
And then you look on the last page, with all of the areas that you guys get involved with, the OKI funded projects since 2010. I'm curious as to what is OKI's stance in general on the notion of rail-based rapid transit.
Well, as I said earlier, it's bottom up process. We work with our partners at Sorta and Tank and CTC and Butler County RTA, Middletown, Warren County Transportation Services. Rail transit is eligible. In other words, something like a streetcar or inter-regional rail transit would be eligible. Mm-hmm. In fact, Butler County RTA did come to us and ask us to fund a center in Oxford to accommodate an Amtrak rail station. So that's an eligible process. They applied, and they actually that's in this cycle, and they what can I say? It's eligible, and if it wins in our process, then we fund it. As long as the board approves it, yes.
It just seems like that something like a rail-based rapid transit or an inter-regional system, you guys are the inter-regional. You know what I mean? I mean, if you depend on individual communities of the 196 jurisdictions that you work with to get together, it seems like you already have a regional body that should be leading it rather than being responsive to it. I'm not saying that as a criticism. I'm just, it's a tough nut to crack, and I'm just wondering what the 196 jurisdictions you work with have in the way of opinions about the need for and how to do a large regional transit.
Well, it's been tried several times. I've been at OKI for a long time. The most recent was maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And it's a matter of funding. It's just impossible. OKI doesn't have the resources. After that was the Ohio 3C corridor, and Governor Kasich nixed that. And it was in design, it was moving forward, and he said the state has no money to put into this. So that was their decision. I mean, we're just pragmatic. We know that it's a matter of funding. That in a perfect world, if everybody had what they wanted, it probably would be built by now. Would it make sense? I don't know. That's up for your all's interpretation. It's very expensive on a per ride basis. But some people argue it's very expensive not to have rapid transit. I won't give you my personal opinion, because it doesn't matter. Our board has not adopted anything with rail transit at this point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Bateman.
Thank you for the presentation. First of all, I was reading in the news recently that it's kind of been underreported. I think that in the next couple of weeks there's going to be a opening of a bike trail connector that connects our Little Miami Scenic Bike Trail with the Kellogg Avenue and the Ohio River Trail. Did OKI have anything to do with that process of creating that Beachmont connection that allows the Little Miami Trail to connect with the Ohio River Trail? And if so, can you talk a little bit about how long that took and who were the stakeholders?
Yeah, OKI was involved from a funding perspective, and we supported the planning effort, but I'm not taking any credit because Great Parks and Tri-State Trails and others had done that, and they paid for the engineering and design. We simply funded it. If you're familiar with the Beachmont levee, they extended the piers on that bridge, and it's a cantilevered bridge, and they added the segment for bicycle and pedestrians, and also are building a tunnel under State Route 32. So if you're on, let's say you're in Newtown and you're headed south, you go down the trail past all the soccer complex, you're heading towards Beachmont Levee, you'll be able to go underneath and wrap around, and then that connects to the Arm Leader Park and the Lunkin Trail. Now, if you're a cyclist and you're down there on Saturday morning for exercise, you know what I mean. It's a great connection. You can now go all the way to, you can go downtown if you, for the most part, at least to the school on stilts there. Forget the name of the school, but you know where I'm talking about. You can get that far on trail. So there's one final connection that the city is trying to do. There are a couple rail lines that are in that corridor on the north side of US 52 that the city is working with SORTA. SORTA owns both of those, and it leases one to a short line railroad to move freight. And for years, railroads have, said, it's too dangerous. We don't want anybody next to our rail lines. But, come on, I don't think that that's really a reason. I mean, how many times have things fallen off a train and, whatever. So making progress there. But yeah, that's a kind of a cool project. I won't take credit for it other than the fact that we funded a good chunk of that. The ribbon cutting is next Wednesday at 10:30, right in that vicinity. You know where that big hill is on the golf course at the top of there? You go, it's near there where the ribbon cutting will be.
Yeah, I think that's that's really a great opportunity for Loveland. I think for the east side neighborhoods and south of us to be able to come up into Loveland on bike, and also for residents in the community here to be able to safely ride down to that area. I recall in years past how frustrating it was that the bike trail just sort of had a dead end right there. And so it was essentially preventing maybe the inexperienced cyclists, those that might not be comfortable riding on roads, to venture any further, and creates that link. So I think that's a good example of OKI's, the process at work. And how long did that application process take?
It was allocated, I guess is the better term. I guess 3 cycles ago. So it takes a while. I mean, especially with a project in that area where there are environmental issues that need to be addressed. Not that there's risk there, but you're putting additional something or other in the river, and the design work for that bridge and the tunnel and so on and so forth. But yeah, that was a good, Mr. Bateman, a good example of making a connection. That, remember I said we value making connections, and that was a good example there. A little bit further east, Salem to Sutton was one of those difficult segments too. Now that area doesn't see quite as much traffic. Nothing sees quite as much traffic as the Loveland Bike Trail, or the Miami to Miami as it's officially known, I guess. Little Miami Trail. I don't know what the official name is, actually. I think it's Little Miami Trail. But everyone calls it the Loveland Bike Trail. So kudos to you guys.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Kaler. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here. We appreciate it.
You're very much welcome. And if you have any questions, comments, or any thoughts, talk to him and he'll relay them to me.
Very good.
All right. If you don't mind, I'm going to head on home now.
Head on out. Thank you very much.
All right. You're welcome.
All right. Next, we have open forum. And first, is it Michael Spresser? Is that correct?
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. As she said, my name is Michael Spresser, and I'm the Director of Church Administration at Loveland Presbyterian Church, located at 6796 Loveland, Miamiville Road. As some of you may remember, a couple of years ago, before I was in this position, the church installed a gate on Robin Avenue and opened up a new driveway on Loveland, Miamiville Road. And since that time, we have had neighbors that have had various perceptions of when and how often the gate has been open and been used. And I just wanted to publicly thank this evening City Manager Kennedy and members of the fire department. Over the past couple of months, we have worked to find a solution, and with the cooperation of the city, we've installed a Knox box on the gate so the city can do what they need to do, what we need to do, and I just sincerely appreciate the fact that we were able to work together and figure out the best way to solve that issue for all parties involved. And I wanted to make sure you guys know that you have top-notch folks working for you here. So thank you.
Good. It's always good to hear. Thank you. Laura Nenda?
Good evening, Lauren Enda, 5073 Bristol Court. So I'm here tonight to update you guys on an event that happened this past weekend. You may or may not have heard. On Saturday, we had 3 paid contractors, 12 volunteers, and myself spending a total of 53 man-hours working and sweating in the West Loveland Nature Preserve. The goal was to remove as many invasives as possible in the woods and allowing that very delicate ecosystem to start to begin to heal. So as a team, we identified the invasives, we cut them down, we then applied the appropriate herbicide to the cut stalks, and then finally we stacked them ready for removal by Public Works, or we stacked them in the woods to help prevent erosion. At the end of the day, we estimated that we cut between 900 and 1,000 invasives. The piles were massive. They were huge. It was a lot of work. On hand, we had 3 chainsaws and 1 brush cutter, which made the work go a lot faster than just plain old hand saws and loppers, which we had been using before that. So, by the way, how this started was I had started doing this by myself because I just know that it needs to be done. And I realized that I'm too old, and because those invasives are huge and heavy. So then I started gathering volunteers together, and that was great, but that was too slow. So then I decided to hire professional invasive removers at my own expense to make that process go quicker. So the vast majority of what we downed was bush honeysuckle, many decades old and very damaging to even the mature trees in that area. We also cut Callery pear, multiflora rose, and privet, among others. In the massive tangle of honeysuckle, we uncovered a discarded tire, a mirror, and many alcohol bottles. So I had volunteered for many of these kinds of events in the past. However, before the event, I did coordinate with experts in invasive removal from several organizations. I spoke with the land stewardship manager at the Arc of Appalachia, the restoration program manager at the Ohio River Foundation, and a retired landscape architect who now sits on the board of directors of the nonprofit Taking Root. So I told them about my plan, what I'd planned to do, how I was going to run the event. They were all on board, very appreciative. And so with their support, concurrence, and advice, I felt confident. So many behind the scenes things happened as I planned the event. I want to thank Jason Brock for his support and encouragement and his logistics help. And the entire Public Works team who took care of the stacked woody debris so quickly. I mean, they were Johnny on the spot Monday, mulching the debris that we had stacked and left behind. Many thanks to Krista, who beautifully promoted the event on Loveland social media, and to Dave and Scott, who gave us the green light to proceed with the event. So thank you. But of course, the biggest huge shout out of all goes to the volunteers who, because of their dedication to protecting Loveland's preserves and parks, spent part of their beautiful autumn Saturday to work in the woods. So we had people from Loveland. We had people not from Loveland. We had one of the board of directors from Taking Root actually came. She was very helpful. So we worked very hard. We were very sweaty and very dirty, but we also laughed. We motivated each other. We shared information about invasives and our hopes for healthier ecosystems throughout the region. So for just those few hours, we were really a bonded community with a shared vision. So what's next? I will pay for and plan another invasive removal event just like this one in November. Additionally, a reforestation of part of that cleared area will take place in November. And for 2023 and beyond, I hope that invasive species removal will be a line item budget for Loveland. So I encourage everyone to visit the West Loveland Nature Preserve. So we were working, not where you guys worked last year or earlier this year, I guess, but we worked off of West Loveland Avenue as you enter it, that from West Loveland Avenue. So you can actually see the hidden creek. It's no longer hidden because the invasives are gone. You can see the forest floor. Several people, oh, I'm going to be buzzed. Several people, commented that the acorns and the nuts that were on the floor now have a chance to grow and live and thrive. Hopefully, this event will be the start of the long healing process that the natural spaces in Loveland are desperately in need of. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Mrs. Edna. We appreciate your efforts and the efforts of all the volunteers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was an awesome day. Thanks.
Thank you. Tom Scovanner.
Tom Scovanner, 155 Overlook Drive. I'm going to deviate just a moment and comment on Sue Matson. It's been my professional privilege to work with her for decades in Claremont County, from patrol officer to chief of police, and then I was tickled to death to see her take the position here. I knew she would help us in Loveland, so I was very happy to see that. And a very wise choice, Mr. Kennedy, I must tell you. Tonight, it's a busy night, busy agenda with many items of note. One item is a possible sewer expansion at East Loveland Avenue. It's easily overlooked, only 2 paragraphs of the 131-page agenda packet. But what jumps out is that this possible expansion of the city is providing $280,080. In discussions with MSD that we've had on our own, this is a future project. They were planning on this some 4 to 5 years down the road, but now this project is being pushed to the present time for some reason. East Loveland Sewer is adequate for today. Expansion is only needed to facilitate increased development. Last July, in the aftermath of the Dries proposal, city leadership said regarding this East Loveland Sewer, quote, if future development comes in which at this point nothing is before us, we will make sure that it is spelled in any zoning and other agreement that no sewer improvements will be made by the city, end quote. Now, 2.5 months later, the city's planning to spend $280,080 on sewer improvement that the city doesn't really need for current needs. We were told today, quote, MSD wants to fix the sewer main in conjunction with our East Loveland Bridge project, end quote. So again, we contacted MSD, and they said, no, this plan is a 4 to 5 year out project for us. It's the city that's pushing for this expansion. And the agenda packet confirms that, because in the agenda packet it says, and I quote from page 15, the city staff has engaged MSD. If MSD was engaging the city, it would probably say it that way. A later email explains that the city wants to do the project now because the city doesn't want to dig up the road later. That makes some sense. But if this is the real motivation, why earlier today we were told that MSD was behind it? And why am I told 2 different stories within a few hours? It makes me wonder, what is the truth? Call me cynical, but I'm not sure what to believe. So why is this being pushed now? We know the city has current capacity needed. We also know that the current sewer would not have supported the proposed Dries plan to build 209 houses on the newly annexed property on the ground. We know without this expanded connection to Loveland sewer infrastructure, development of the rail property is limited. We know from public records requests that Dries and the city had direct discussions about development of the rail property for more than a year before that property was annexed, notwithstanding city leadership's public denials of such. So this begs the question, who's behind this sudden interest in expansion of the East Loveland sewer line? What are we not being told as citizens? City government owes it to the residents to be open and transparent regarding possible development. Citizens shouldn't find out after the fact that the city is in extensive discussions with the developer, especially if the possible development is one that many citizens of Loveland oppose. City leadership owes it to the citizens to explain why in July the city position regarding East Loveland sewer was, quote, no sewer improvements will be made by the city, end quote. And now, September, couple months later, the city has engaged MSD to expand that East Loveland sewer at a cost of $280,000. In addition to the direct cost, this project required grant money that Loveland cannot use then for other projects that benefit the citizens as a whole, like preventing the continuing water main breaks that plague our city. The city needs to focus on helping all citizens rather than developers, and to be open and tell us the whole unvarnished truth behind our plans. Thank you.
Mr. Kennedy, would you like to respond?
The city's funding towards this project is for the storm drain improvements, the sidewalk improvements, moving our water main. MSD has had a plan, I believe, Cindy, ultimately to run the sewer main from the up near the church. I'm sorry, near the school down to West Loveland Bridge. They videotaped that sewer main and found that it is just collapsing. And Cindy, you're just going to have to chime in at any time. And by them partnering now, they're paying for, if the project is funding, the portion of the sewer main project is paid by MSD. I got to tell you that the amount of grief this city would get if we replaced that bridge, ripped, and MSD came back through and ripped all of that up, would just be beyond the amount of grief that we would get. Our application to do the sidewalks, to do the storm drain, to move the water main that we have to move if that bridge that's owned by Claremont County is going to be replaced, is now a stronger application because we have Metropolitan Sewer District as part of it. Cindy, you're going to have to chime in because we sat with MSD last week ago. Did the word Drees ever come up at any point in time? Was the Grail property ever discussed at any point in time? It was a very worthwhile meeting because as we prepare to do our streetscape plan, it's good to know that they're going to come zipping down the middle of West Loveland, and we will certainly not do any streetscape improvements on this side of West Loveland until they're done, because every time they do a sewer main, they replace all the laterals. The $280,000 is going towards our portion of the project. We're not paying for the engineering. We made it very clear. If Metropolitan Sewer District wants to piggyback on this project, my hat's off to them. It will help our application. If the grant is not improved, Claremont County Engineer's Office, and you can call them, has waited an extensively long period of time to get going to replace their bridge within our city limits. At some point in time, they're going to say, we're starting to get the utilities out. The realm of sewer main that would have to be replaced right along the bridge, if the city has to pay for it, we will go back to MSD to get a reimbursement on this. Can you chime in, Cindy? What am I missing?
So we've applied for funding for East Loveland Avenue the last two OPWC rounds, and I know Bob was here from OKI. I believe Ed Williams with TEC also applied for TA funds because of the sidewalk portion of the project. We got denied every time we've applied. So every time we apply for an OPWC project and we get denied, we really get the gears turning. We try to think of how we can make this application better. So after the Drees letter came back that they didn't have capacity out there, and talking to MSD, and they were saying, yeah, we got a plan 4 or 5 years out. You know, we've already been working on this a little bit, but we don't have, all of our things ready to go yet. But in a few years, we're going to come through. And I said, oh no, guys, we can't wait a few years because Claremont County is doing the bridge. So we started meeting with Ian Lasky at MSD. I don't know who you talked to, but Ian recently took over for someone else who left for the stormwater department. So they've had a lot of overturn lately. But Ian Lasky has been awesome to work with. As far as having a nice MSD contact now that is responsive to our calls and emails. We told him, we've got this section of East Loveland Avenue that we've applied for 2 years in a row. Claremont County applied last year through a different district, and they have their funding. They are going forward with their bridge project next year. They were kind enough to wait on their project and not build it this year to give us one more bite at the apple. So we're trying our best to get this application looking better and to have MSD as a partner, with them kicking in $600, $800 $686,200 is their new estimate. I think it was $670 a week ago, but they've tweaked their numbers. Almost $700,000 is what they're kicking in for the sewer portion of the project. We are not applying for a grant for the sewer, and our local match is not going for the sanitary sewer.
No, we're not putting anything towards the sanitary. And I can honestly tell you, since the day the city turned down the development up on Dries, I have not heard from Dries. They've never called me. I saw a Dries guy up at the home ramen. He said, hey, and walked past me. I've not had any plans put in front of me for that, for any kind of residential. We've always had interest where people say, hey, I'd like to maybe do this in Grail. I'd like to do this. Call the Grail. I guess my problem is that when you can have mutual partners in an application, and I believe Mr. Kaler would have told you this, the more people you have at the table, the better the application looks. We came really close when it was the city and the Claremont County Engineer's Office. We think when we submit this application, we're going to see, because not only is it the timing, it's the convenience for the Andy Batemans. I'm sorry, Andy, but for the Andy Batemans of the world who aren't going to have a bridge while this project's going on. Fire department is literally going to park emergency vehicles over there to be able to serve that area. And if we would do a project and MSD would come in later after it's all done, rip down a lane of that bridge, I don't know how I would address those residents. I can tell you honestly, and I'm going to have Ian send me an email, because I just feel, for my own honesty factor, which is a pretty big deal, Ian is who we're working with. Ian is who we met with. Ian is sitting there going, how do we get on your schedule? That's what he was doing.
Right.
How can we get on your schedule? We want to do this now because we're going to look stupid, because all of this stuff's going to be exposed. It's going to be $700,000. What would it cost if they have to come back later and rip up all of this brand new bridge? I'm sorry, but if I'm wrong, Cindy, that's part of the reason.
Yeah,
If I'm wrong with anything I said,
when we've met with Ian, they gave us a preliminary estimate. I think it was almost $2 million for them to do a sanitary sewer project on their own.
Oh,
with
yeah.
engineering and
see this as a golden opportunity. No one wants to look at a photo of a camera video of an inside of a sewer line, but oh my goodness, that stretch of sewer main that they showed us, that video, forget about expansion for a second. Just the sheer disjointness of the entire run is it. Are they going to make the pipe bigger? Well, of course they're going to make the pipe bigger. But for me, comfort-wise, my takeaway was they had a city attorney for MSD in there, and she was literally looking at Cindy going, when do you need this? When do you need this? When do you need this? Because we made it very clear. Claremont County engineers, they're done being patient. They're doing that bridge whether we're in there or not. They're moving forward with us or without us, because they wanted it done last year. They would like right now that bridge would be replaced. But my takeaway from that meeting, and maybe I'm wrong, I took this as MSD saw us doing them a favor by saying, hey, we're getting ready to do a project. You want to jump on board with us? It's doing us a favor because it's one strong application now. And the $280,000 is sidewalks, decorative railing on that bridge will match what we're doing up here, storm drain piping, and we have to move our water main. And and if I'm tripping myself up, I will apologize, but I am going to reach out to Ian tomorrow, because I don't think they're with it. And I will make sure that whatever that is.
And one of the things that we asked Ian for was an update to that TV inspection of their sanitary sewer pipe. They had some clips from 2007 and some clips from 2020. And he said that he would get a crew on it ASAP, but he wasn't sure if they would get a crew out there before our September 23rd application date. When I was out there yesterday taking updated photos of cracks in pavement, and
because they're doing a flushing now.
They were out there getting prepared for it. So
yeah, they've been doing a flushing, because I received some calls today from residents who found something we should not mention inside their sewer, inside their bathrooms, and they're all wrapping them with plastic bags tonight because they're coming back tomorrow. Andy, I don't know if you noticed that, but I'm sorry, Tom. That is, as far as I know it, that's exactly how it is. I appreciate the explanation. That's why I think it is, and I'll reach out to Ian to confirm. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any further comment?
Yes. Just I appreciate the fact that I think you've got a pretty fulsome response to this. And, some people look at a garden and see roses and some people see thorns. And there's nothing nefarious going on here, to the extent I would just term it a little bit reckless to come in and make accusations that go to the integrity of our staff. And to that extent, I resent the way you approach this. However, I think you got the information perhaps that you needed to hear. There are other ways of getting that information informally or meeting with Dave. But I again appreciate the fact that we had a response at the ready. And
Ted, I gave
thank you.
a really quick answer today, and then I came back later and gave it more detailed. I should have gave more detailed the first time. I'm sorry. I sent a quick email, and I went back and gave more detail. I should have gave a more detailed email in the beginning. There was a lot going on. So, but I try to respond to Sharon like I would anyone. It was a legit question, and she got a really quick email from me, and I there's more detail I could have included, including with the right contact with MSD. So I take that. So.
Well, I appreciate that. I would also submit, however, that tonight we're going to hear all about why this is happening and how it is happening when we get to that point in the agenda. And that's not necessarily an awful idea to wait and hear what our explanation is at a meeting before throwing out accusations. Just a suggestion. All right. Next on the agenda is review and approval of minutes from the August 23rd, 2022 meeting. Are there any changes or additions to those minutes? Can we have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
We have a second reading of an ordinance. Could you go ahead and read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance amending the classification for the position of Marketing and Communications Coordinator position and repealing Ordinance 2022-74.
Any comments on this item? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Ordinance 87 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
All right, so we're back to you, Cindy. We're now at this item in the agenda. So you can go ahead and give us anything else we need to know about this.
Sure. So this year we're applying for 2 PWC projects. The first one is Harrison Avenue. So we're looking at the sections of it between Carl Brown and Railroad, adding sidewalk, replacing storm sewer there. The other block of Harrison that we're looking at, people think is just part of a parking lot driveway, but it's actually a dedicated road right of way. It's got about a 70-foot jog in it. Railroad Avenue also has a jog in that intersection. Then right on the other side of the intersection, we've got the bike trail crossing. So we're not able to do the standard sign application, a big stop sign way up high over a parking stall. You don't see advanced warning signs of the bike trail crossing when you're headed westbound. There are certain things that we can't do because of the parking stalls that are there. So this will be a big safety improvement project to add sidewalk on both of those blocks and try to do a little bit of realignment within the intersection as well as that block moving it over. The other big draw of this project is storm sewer capacity will be improved. Harrison Avenue, the new section, will obviously need to have some new sewer. The section that's between Railroad and Carl Brown, and from Carl Brown north to the outlet into the Abandoned Creek, is all undersized. It's only a 12-inch pipe when it should be a 24-inch for today's current regulations. And then to get that storm sewer in place through Nisbet Park before we make other Nisbet Park improvements like the amphitheater work or something else like that, would be great to get all that underground stuff done and out of the way first. So that project is almost about $500,000. And we're going to be applying for a grant with a local match and not have a loan component like we asked for last year. The strategy in that is that we rated better last year for LTIP than we did for SKIP. LTIP is Local Transportation Improvement Project funds. SKIP is State Capital Improvement Project funds. SKIP has a grant or a loan option, and LTIP only has a grant option. So with us asking for a partial loan last year, we weren't eligible for LTIP. Which is unfortunate because we scored higher in LTIP and lower in SKIP. So East Loveland Avenue is very much the same. We were rated 6th in the entire district last year if it was an LTIP project. But we had a 50-50 grant loan split. This year we're ponying up the $280 some odd $1,000 match. It was about $1 million application last year. This year, the total construction cost is $2,167,000 because this year we're able to show Claremont County as a partner since they have their match in hand this year versus last year they were also an applicant just in a different district. So this year Claremont County has their $478,320 that we can count as other matching funds and get credit for. MSD is showing $686,200 currently as their estimated construction cost. So between the two of those, we've got over a 50% match on this project as far as OPWC's eyes are concerned. Our $280,000 match is important because it meets two criteria that I wanted to hit when I was talking to Dave about budgeting for next year. One is I still want this project to be eligible for SKIP, and they require a 10% minimum local match. So I wanted to hit that 10% mark, and this is about 12%. It also covers what our costs would be for relocating utilities should we not get the OPWC funds. So if we don't get approved for OPWC and Claremont County moves ahead with their bridge, we still have to move utilities at the bridge. We won't do all the sidewalk, we won't do all the storm, we won't repave, but we will do what we got to do, and we'll also have enough in there for upgrading the railing on the bridge, the other portions that we told Claremont County that you could count on us for as a partner, and we'll just have to forget all the other scope. But I'm hoping with these new partners that we have, Claremont County and MSD, being able to show condition on the bridge, condition on the sanitary sewer pipe, capacity increases because the bridge has a weight reduction limit on it. The sanitary sewer needs to be upsized for any future development. We've got health and safety concerns. Thank you, largely in part to the sanitary sewer. Also the sidewalk, we'll have a lot of safety endpoints for that, I'm hoping. So I'm just really excited. I think that like third time may be it. So were there any questions about the applications or the scope abatement? Yeah.
First of all, just in keeping for full transparency, as I have in the past with regard to applications regarding the East Loveland, I plan to abstain on my vote for that. But I just had a couple of questions. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that we applied and this was not funded. Do you recall the time frame of the last application?
The last 2 years.
The last 2 years. So we've essentially put this same project into a proposal for the last 2 years before we annexed Grailville, before Drees had a development. Okay. The only other thing I would say is I'll commend Mr. Kennedy and Cindy and the whole city staff in that these two projects are really great examples of collaborative proposals, but also really integral plans long term for what will have impact both for my neck of woods on the east side, but what Harrison will do for the visitors and the residents of downtown. So, I think that I appreciate the persistence and the creativity to try to create this. And again, the priority, you went in reverse priority order. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Orr.
Just want to say what a great job of partnering up with the other two. I think this project, because it's been around for 2 years, and I remember you presenting it to us, council, a couple of years ago, that this is just a great effort to make sure the project gets done right. Thank you, and to Dave too. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Hart.
Quick question about the Harrison. You talked about the Nisbet Park.
Mm-hmm.
Would that finish up and Mr. Kennedy also?
Yep.
Would that finish up and make Nisbet Park like project ready for the Nisbet
Yep.
master plan at that point?
We at this point we do nothing but look at projects on the east side of Nisbet, the gazebo, the new seating area, because we can't move forward with the big project, which would be the amphitheater. Corey's already engaged a firm, not formally, but we have a firm ready who does nothing but fundraising efforts for cities. Because when you're doing an amphitheater, we can get a little bit of grant money towards it. But when you're doing an amphitheater, the naming rights, which is becoming also more common in today's world, we certainly just wouldn't know how that would be structured. You know, it's the XYZ amphitheater, the XYZ stage, and so on and so forth. So the ability for us to reach out to a firm who knows this, does this, Mason, who puts together projects like that is really what's probably going to make the gazebo of the amphitheater a reality. And until Harrison goes through like Godzilla right through the middle with the new storm piping, which collects a significant amount of water from the downtown district, we can't even complete the bike trail, the connection down to the river, that artist point, moving the park, moving the play set a little bit to all the big plans. All we can do now is concentrate only on east side projects. And that's actually you're going to be approving that tonight. So, yeah, it's really important that we get both of those projects funded. And by going through LTIP the way she's doing it and learning is as beneficial as I think Corey being on OKI when the city goes all in to OKI for funding for implementing all the pedestrian improvements along Loveland Madeira Road, really showing that comprehensive plan coming into reality, because we know OKI is a funding. Corey knows it. That's now you heard him. You have a comprehensive plan. We're already getting cost estimates. All that's being done. That's how beneficial it is having him on OKI. She goes out and they go out and actually rank fictitious projects to help learn on what makes them better. So by giving her time to this committee, the city continually learns and benefits and puts in better applications because of Cindy's efforts. If we can get both of those projects funded, and we feel pretty confident, that's really helping the city on two significant elements. Because what people forget about Harrison, not only is it widening Harrison, putting in much needed sidewalks, it's going to make Carl Brown a much more desirable left turn, because that right turn onto Harrison's not going to be like turning into your driveway. It's going to be aproned and tapered, and everything is going to be done correctly. Lights and everything will be adjusted to make that a true right turn. Right now, you can't turn if there's somebody there. All of that will be fixed with this Harrison project. So it's a biggie. So,
gotcha. I saw the gazebo. The gazebo is always on there, and I'm getting pretty excited about that.
oh yeah, it's going to be something.
Anyone else?
Just
Yes, Vice Mayor.
I know the applications are due in 10 days. I assume you got them ready to go. But once they're submitted, when do you think you hear back?
So I'm on the support staff for the District 2 integrating committee. So I'm one of the people who rate projects. I'm just not allowed to rate our own. So we do that in October. Then there's an appeals period. November, the integrating committee meets. So I should know in November, right before budgets.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Very good. All right. We'll go ahead and read the resolution.
Resolution authorizing the city engineer to prepare and submit applications to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission, state capital improvement and or local transportation improvement programs, and to execute a contract as required.
Any comment on the legislation? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hart,
Absolutely.
Mr. Ori,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Yes.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Abstain, because it's
Mis-
close to my.
and Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Resolution 88 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you. Thank you. You don't have to stay, but we appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Cindy.
All right, Mr. Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening I have before City Council a proposal from TEC Engineering for the completion of engineering design work in furtherance of the, calling it the 2nd Street State Route 48 intersection improvement project. So we're all familiar with the mobile station. We're sort of in a hurry up and wait mode right now, waiting on the state of Ohio to get the grant agreement finalized with Claremont County. And we have been working already. Mr. Braun and I have the sub-grant agreement that we're starting to look at in furtherance of that. So as soon as we've been told that to delay the demolition efforts until the grant agreement and sub-agreement is in place, and we hope to bring that to council soon as the state award finalizes their award to Claremont County. So with that, this is a prime opportunity to start the design work, because I remember one of the first things City Manager Kennedy and I spoke about was the importance of this project, from the acquisition through to the ultimate completion of this turn lane improvement, which will benefit our Warren County residents directly, and the city generally, and the downtown district. And so we have a proposal from TEC Engineering for $41,210 to complete the full design work for that. And that's one might say, well, it's just a turn lane. Well, it's a pretty complex site. There's utilities, there's utility relocation. You have to design that and all of that. And obviously will be, TEC has a proven track record. They were the lead on the success, or the hopefully successful OKI pedestrian enhancement project that Mr. Kaler referenced earlier this evening. And so they bring a lot of technical acumen and design expertise to that. So this project, as I indicated, the timing's ripe for that. We can implement a multi-phased approach here, which will include surveying, final design, looking at the cabinet, looking at all the improvements there, so that we are ready while we're waiting on the demolition work, which can proceed independently, to then bid this project either as a standalone project in 2023 or as a component of our 2023 road program. Quite frankly, either way, you may get some savings if it's bid as part of the 2023 road program, just from your quantity perspectives. But either way, with the design work finished, this is the time to do that. So looking at this, the capacity there, this will add additional capacity. This will clean this up. And also, I've provided some renderings for City Council, sort of setting the vision for what's next after we advance this project, and specifically maybe opportunities for a pocket park improvement there, a gateway feature, particularly leveraging the success of downtown, and then building upon the streetscape program and the streetscape plan that council is currently reviewing right now. So with that, kind of tying all of that together, setting the stage for now, a project next year, hopefully, with the design being completed, and then future opportunities with that. So given where we are, the fiscal impact here is $41,210. This would advance us through basically design to get the bidding. And we will, if approved, we'll engage TEC immediately to allow them to get started on this and really get the wheels turning, no pun intended. So with that, I respectfully request the council approve the requested legislation authorizing the city manager to execute the contract for professional design and engineering services with TEC Engineering in furtherance of the 2nd Street State Route 48 improvement project, and authorizing an expenditure of $42,210 in furtherance of the same.
All right. Any questions?
Sure.
So it is 42,210.
42,210.
Because the vice mayor just noted that in the actual resolution it's 41,210.
If I have a typo in the
We just
resolution,
need to. Is that
I apologize. That is.
Why don't we just move to amend it?
Yes.
I can.
But first, before we get to that, does anybody have any questions on the? Yes. Mr. Davis.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we were clear that the 42,210 did not include some of the visionary examples of the landscaping or pocket park. It's strictly just the engineering for the turn lane and the intersection.
Yeah, I mean, so you have the engineering. We'll have them look at the relocation of utilities. They're going to look at that because we have to move poles anyway to accommodate the turn lane. We have to look at resetting the utilities, the water meter, in furtherance of a future project. We have to look at opportunities for the placement of street lighting. But again, Duke Energy offers an outstanding service where you basically design that turnkey. So with that, this is primarily for the construction of the project, but I'd be remiss if we did not point those things out to TEC as part of our design work on the project. So,
And I just wanted to add, because I asked her, Corey to throw those in there, because I think one of the things when the turn lane is going to be completed, and it will be completed in 23, I think one of the things that many people are going to be a little surprised by is how little of the property is used for the turn lane and how much is going to be left for a really signature feature. And Corey drives around on weekends taking pictures of pocket parks all over the place and texts them to me. So I just thought it would be important for everyone to realize that this was more than simply purchasing a property, removing an environmental issue, making traffic better. It's got the potential for a really signature feature, something really special. And he just thought now would be a good time to sort of promote it.
and so a point of clarification on it is 41,210. And I misread that. I actually have 41,210 in the resolution and the memorandum.
So the resolution is correct. The memo was incorrect.
There may be a typo in the memorandum, but
That's better. That's much better.
$210.
We
Yes.
prefer that.
We don't need
Yes.
to. We don't have to amend.
Very good. Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions? All right. Want to go ahead and read the resolution?
Resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with TEC Engineering Inc. for professional design services and engineering services in furtherance of the 2nd Street intersection improvement project.
All right. Any comments on the resolution? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Resolution 89 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
All right. Mr. Wright.
Thank you again, Mayor. This evening, I have before council a bid award recommendation for the Chestnut Street remediation project, the component of the project we're calling the site cleanup and lead contaminated soil remediation work. So I won't belabor too much about the Chestnut Street project. Obviously, we are full bore trying to spend this money that we were graciously awarded from the state to remediate this long-standing property here in the city. And so with that, one of the major task orders is this debris pile and lead soil contamination. And what we have is we were able to bid task order 2 and task order 3, which is the lead soil remediation and debris pile, and then also the groundwater remediation. And we'll discuss the groundwater remediation bid separately as a communication to council later this evening. But in that, we did receive 6 bids for. It was a pretty robust response for the debris cleanup and the lead soils, and we received a low bid from Buckeye Elm Contracting LLC. That low bid was $338,144.49. And while council authorized the full expenditure, which was the expenditure of the grant funds and the associated 25% local match, almost immediately after we got the notice of the award, because we are direct bidding this, we're bringing this back to council so that there's an opportunity to award the bid and also vet that. So this will be reimbursed through the same process. We've already submitted one reimbursement for July. I just received a reimbursement in request we're working on for August. Just a little update on the project. We are midstream on the 404 permit. I got the wetlands consultant update on that today. They're calling Army Corps. They've been actually very responsive in that. The 401 permit from EPA follows, and then also we tried to buy mitigation credits from a bank. They're sold out. I don't know how they sell out a wetlands bank, but there's other banks out there that they're looking to price. They advertise the credits on a per acre basis, the cost on that. All of that comes out of the grant 7525. So with that, what we will do, if this bid is awarded, we will notify the successful bidder, work through the contract negotiations, get everything buttoned up in that. And I really have to thank City Engineer Cindy Kloffenstein for helping me with the city's bid document process. It's a little different coming from a township, but again, it's a lot of the same movements, just different plays to get to the same goal there. So with that, I appreciated that and appreciated working with Mr. Kennedy on that, on the process. And I think we will be ready to get underway as soon as we have those permits in hand. So.
Okay, very good. Any questions? Yes, Mr. Ori.
Not a question, but bravo. Thank you for the work you and staff have done on this. Chestnut Street property has been in our back pocket for a long time, and now we can finally make something happen out of it. So, good work.
Thank you.
Mr. Hart?
This just popped in my head. So when we do the removal of the debris and all that stuff, what is the preferred egress from that property at this point?
So actually, we'll have to cut the construction road in. I mean, right now they're planning on coming in for temporary construction on Chestnut, but with the city taking recent action to acquire or move to acquire 501, the reality is by the time the permit is in hand, most likely we will have concluded our due diligence efforts and can actively begin closing on 501. So one of the things that has been interesting in this process is there may be some residual value in that building as we implement the project, because it offers us an ability to store the zero valent emulsified iron. I'm getting that wrong, I think, but it allows us to store that product for the successful groundwater remediation, because the injections are going to be occurring during cooler to cold and freezing weather. So if we can use the building for a little while and it saves, hauling fees, staging, mobilization, that's a benefit to the city. And certainly with that, there's, I believe, looking at the site and having walked it with Patriot Engineering and the owner, there's adequate ingress and egress that we could bring construction in that way even. And that's even more of a benefit. So really the timing of these pieces couldn't be more appropriate or well-timed in that, because of kind of all of these different puzzle pieces coming together there.
Interesting. Thank you.
Mr. Blair?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Wright, how much dirt is going to leave that site?
Oh, goodness.
Is it a bunch?
There'll be a lot. There'll
Okay.
be a lot of excavation, a lot of piles, a lot of what you think may be dirt when you walk it isn't really dirt, because it's a little bit of topsoil with a lot of junk underneath of it. So they'll have to do a lot of export on that, and then they'll do import of clean soil on that as well. And then similarly with the lead excavation, they have to pull that out and dispose of that in an appropriate manner.
Where does it go?
It goes to a regulated facility. I don't know the exact location of where they'll dispose of it, but there are places that actually take that contaminated soil.
And take full responsibility for it.
Yes, and the contractor's on the hook for all of that.
One last question. Have you worked with Elm Buckeye before?
I have not worked with them before, but they do. I mean, they do work all over Ohio, and this kind of work, while technical, it is not overly technical or sole source. And I think that that's why we bid it. Because we got bids from, the bid tabs are in the memo. We got bids from Synesis, Buckeye Elm, Citywide Waste Removal, O'Rourke, Great Lakes Construction, and Blue River Environmental. So all of these companies are qualified to do this. And particularly what's important was City Council taking action to secure the services of Patriot Engineering to provide the voluntary action plan and environmental services oversight. And they are literally holding our hand through the process.
Okay.
So,
thank you very much.
yes.
Comments, questions? Yes, Vice Mayor.
Any idea what the time frame is on this project?
Well, we had an aggressive timeline in the bid document. If you look at I think in the bid, I think it was a 60-day performance period in that. I'd have to go back and double check the contract documents. For some reason, 60 days sticks in my head, but again, that's all contingent on the issuance of the 404, because you're sort of in a catch-22, and I think that's where the city was for a long time with Chestnut. We couldn't turn any dirt because we couldn't get the clearance because they thought there were 6 to 7 acres of wetlands there. And then by moving forward with wetlands delineation study, finding out there's 1/10 of an acre of wetlands, it's much easier for us to get a clearing and grading permit under the nationwide permit. And so with that, we can advance that work much quicker. We actually may not end up spending all the grant money because the wetlands cost is significantly less than originally projected. So things are moving the right direction and in our favor. I think that assuming that the bids come in, the 404 comes in, our wetlands consultant tells us that we hope to have a permit by the end of the month. Again, I'm working with a U.S. federal agency, so we're sort of at their mercy. But, I think that the goal would be to have most of the remediation work done in 2023, and then we're doing the monitoring phase that's required. Now, that's more extensive. That's 6 quarters of groundwater monitoring, I believe. So, but it'll happen very quickly.
Any other questions, comments? All right, I just want to thank Mr. Wright and Mr. Kennedy. This is a hugely technical and time-intensive project that you obviously we have quality people at the helm to carry this through, because this is, I think, more than any of us realize how much is involved in taking this to the goal line. So thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank
you. Mrs. Clark, you can take a deep breath and read the resolution, please.
Title, yes. Resolution awarding the bid to complete the Chestnut Street property debris pile and lead impact soil remediation project to Buckeye Elm Contracting as the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, authorizing the city manager to execute the contract with Buckeye Elm Contracting for completion of the Chestnut Street property debris pile and lead impact soil remediation project, and further authorizing the expenditure of $338,144.49 in furtherance of the project.
Thank you. Any comment on the resolution? Call the roll.
I didn't hear it. Can she repeat?
Yes, sure. Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Phelps.
Yes.
Mr. Ping.
Yes.
Mayor Bailey.
Yes.
Mr. Bateman.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Ori.
Yes.
Resolution 90 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy.
I just want to add, Corey doesn't just understand all that stuff. He thoroughly enjoys it, finds saying emulsion. How often are you going to use the word emulsion in a council meeting? You might want to check the records, but he absolutely loves this stuff. Three items. The first one is almost just sort of a standard operating it. Back in, I believe it was 2011, Ohio Department of Transportation had long been asking municipalities, everyone who has their own bridge within their community, to do bridge inspections. I'm sure what goes on at the ODOT office throughout the state of Ohio was, holy crap, these people can never get this right. Why don't we just do it? So what that became, we'll do it for all the communities. Just every once in a while, do a legislation with your community. Never meant anything to the city because the only bridge, we didn't have any bridges that weren't a county bridge, i.e. the East Loveland Bridge. But when the White Pillar subdivision went in, the Valley Forge Bridge is a city-owned and maintained bridge. So with that, in 2019, you approved legislation getting you through 22. ODOT just sort of limps along as long as they keep funding it. And I would anticipate, because everyone knows it just simply works, that they'll keep funding it. So they've just reached out to the city to pass a legislation authorizing us to be basically all in to enter into the Ohio Department of Transportation Bridge Inspection Program. They just do everything. At some point, that bridge, which is meticulously in good shape, there will be the scrapers and all the little drainage things. It'll also ultimately come with recommendations, because don't get you wrong, they may inspect it for you, but they're not fixing it for you. So someday they may say there's some movement of earth, so on and so forth. So they're the eyes on that bridge. This is just simple legislation. This buys us through 23. I would anticipate we'll all be sitting here about this time next year, because they funded it again, asking you for another year. So that's really all there is to it. They'll be in there. They'll inspect it. Cindy will get all the copies. The checks, the I's will be dotted, and the T's will be crossed, and the city's met their obligation.
Any questions or comments? Vice Mayor.
What's the cost annually for that?
We calculate that this probably saves the city about $750 we would have had to hire a Choice One, a Brandstone and Carroll, a technical Wolpert type engineer. They're not going to show up in the city for less than $750. Cindy, add a little bit of time for Cindy having to coordinate it all to make sure it's all the I's are dotted. It saves the city some money. It's just something off of our plate. That's all. Thank you.
Anyone else? Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into the Ohio Department of Transportation Bridge Inspection Program.
Any comment on the resolution? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Resolution 91 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Kennedy.
So when the city asked the Ohio Department of Natural Resources for permission to put the stairway in from Railroad Avenue down to the bike trail, we included in that was some drainage improvements that were much needed, and of course, ultimately a landscaping plan. And as you know, the city went in and we repaired put in a whole new storm drain system, catch basins, piping, the whole deal. And then the next step was the city contracted out for steps and railing. Go back a little bit farther, if you all recall, what was the main access point to go from the railroad down to the bike trail was a wood pallet that looks like it had been there for 15, 20 years. And I must say that I had the pleasure of being on the bike trail one day when somebody at downtown restaurant was having a Kentucky Derby party, and a young lady in a yellow dress thought she would make that little step, and she went. And I thought, oh my goodness, we need to do that. And so we actually asked for permission from ODNR in 2019. Public Works immediately got on the storm drainage improvements. The steps then were installed, and if you get to live downtown like we all get to here, those are used regularly. And I will tell you that a lot of those businesses really appreciate it. We crossed off that space. Well, originally, we just figured Public Works could go take a little visit to Lowe's, maybe go check out, we get some bushes and do so and so. And ever the perfectionist, Chief Huber said, why wouldn't you hire the same landscape architect you used to design the beautiful landscaping around your new gazebo? And just to give my 93-year-old mother a plug, because God love her, she's a wonderful woman. It just so happens that the landscape architect is not only from the West Side, not only went to the same high school I went to. I find out that his favorite teacher of all time was my mother at his Catholic grade school. Nice. I said to him, Joe, your proposal must be wrong. You're only charging me for the design in the left and the right of the steps. We want to go from Mr. Red all the way to Harrison. He goes, you tell your mother I said hello and she's wonderful? And I go, yeah. And he goes, I'll do it for that price. So my mom saved the city of Loveland a little bit of money. And I just want to tell you, she just thinks that's hilarious. But so with that said, we came up with a design. I probably erred in not running the design in my excitement that this thing is going to look so beautiful past the tree and environment. They did request one amendment. I showed you that amendment to the landscape plan, and that is a switch from a crimson pygmy barberry to a chokeberry, same number, 13, same seasonal flair. That's part of the design of this, is that there's a little something happen every season. And the other part of this is we're taking the drainage even to another level. There's a little dry creek bed design that will go through this to help the water even get further. And for those that enjoy the lending library, it will have stepping stones up to it. That's one of two now, thanks to Councilmember Ori. I think it's a stupendous design. Doug Gilbert from the Tree and Environment Committee would like us also to change out that the weeping redbud tree that was designed. And I said, just go ahead and pick whatever you want. We've removed no trees in this project except one that it was already dead, and that was removed. Reached out to the landscaper again, no charge. I said, what would you recommend the city replace that with? He gave me a list. I've ran that past Doug Gilbert too, to get another full growth tree back in there. All in all, this is going to be a wonderful project. We had $30,000 budgeted. We just need an extra $5,000, considering how long this has taken. I did not know this, but fall's a prime time to do these plantings. So by approving this tonight, getting the go ahead, letting him start to gather the stock, and maybe it'll be stored at Public Works. We keep it all nice and good until he's ready to do it. There's a couple humps, a little bit of site work. Ramsey's is still dealing with some. When we get some real golly washers, Ramsey's is still dealing with a little bit of drainage onto the patio. Went over there last time. I think we know where it is, and that should be corrected too. So all in all, this would be using Finer Lawn, who ironically will also be giving you a bid, is your bid for the gazebo, your next item. I think it's a great project. We reached out to two other landscape suppliers. One was a no bid, another was a no bid, and you won't like our price anyways. I got the impression it was going to be significantly. So this is a price for all installation. I mean, all purchase, all installation, all prep work, everything associated with it. Then it'll be added on to our maintenance, our water maintenance. I will have you know that Corey and I have decided that next year we'll add we're going to add one seasonal worker to our summer seasonal list, and that person, he or she, will be stationed downtown all year, all summer long. If we can take the water truck, park it at the garage, Bronner garage next to gazebo, it just makes sense. That person can take care of all the watering. You know, why can't we blow off the area by Mr. Red? Why can't we prune the trees up and do all those things? It's nothing against Public Works. They just simply don't have the manpower. So we're going to earmark someone just to be our downtown man or person to really give that area the attention it needs. So with that, pretty excited. I think this is going to be a great project. I think by next spring, this is going to really be a beautiful item. Public Works has proven that they can maintain these kind of things. They've proven that. Look what just happened in front of City Hall. That was about take the price of the mums. That's how much that project cost, because Public Works did it all of that. So we've got some pretty handy people in there. So we can do projects like that don't cost this city, but cleaning out Kroger's on their mums. That's really something to say for that group. So
all right. Any comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Hart.
Just quickly, so where it touches Harrison, when we go through that project, is that not gonna be affected like that far?
No, I did, per recommendation of the mayor, I did. Lynn Zook gave it a once over for us for the streetscape plan, just to make sure. I think any future expansion of the patio is going to would be in one of those spaces that is currently carry out. If there is any movement along the ditch line, which quite frankly is going to require more OD&R approval, because we're not that. She said some plants would be adjusted. She thought it was a wonderful plan. So we did have our downtown streetscape planner give it a complimentary
I think
look.
he's talking about the other side.
I know.
Okay.
But yeah, that will not be impacted by this widening, because our goal with Harrison is really to line it up more with the McCoy house that we took down, to line that all up in there. If nothing else was ever to happen in downtown, creating an intersection at Harrison and Railroad and making that the only and primary way into all the parking in downtown, and then running the sidewalks that tie into the barber shop, not a difficult project. And actually, Cindy, our city engineer, by being able to use the remainder of the McCoy lot, we actually have a net gain of 7 spaces, even though we would lose that one road that everyone just comes flying into willy-nilly, not exactly safe. By allowing these angled ones to be straight, by expanding onto the McCoy property, we actually gained 7, and all roads would come into that intersection. There wouldn't be people walking down the middle of the railroad. So it's all part of a plan. We just need Harrison to get funded. So I don't think it will. I don't think it'll impact the lending library or anything. And if it does, Neil will just build us a new one. So,
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Goodman.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Finer Lawn and Landscaping for the installation of landscaping along a portion of the Little Miami Scenic Byway.
Comment on the resolution? Call the roll, please.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Resolution 92 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy.
So we anticipate the new gazebo to be here late October, early November. When you council approved that on April 25th, when you approved us moving forward with the ordering of the design, the ordering, the placement, everything with the gazebo, we made it very clear that night that did not include the concrete a slab. That had to be specifically designed to mirror that. We also had to talk about conduit, everything associated. And the goal since the beginning of time with this gazebo is that it would be elevated. So that, I mean, if you recall, I'm sure I did this with my hands. It was all about how high can we get the gazebo, but not end up having to have it completely wrapped with a handicap access. So we found that to be 18 inches. And then the access would be from the bike trail. What is really neat about this design is of the 8 sides of the octagon, it's going to have a staircase down 5 of those sides. And it is close enough to the bike trail that it's really going to be something. Bob Long from Trevor, who, don't get me started on all that, what that guy does for this city. He's already designed all the conduit, all the electric has already been trenched to the site. The goal is that if you are in downtown Loveland at night, this thing is really going to stand out with the electric. So the neat thing about it is we'll not have any railing around it. It will, because we meet all of the height requirements. So this octagon shaped gazebo foundation, including the stairway around it and the handicap access for $16,920. I won't even tell you what one of our other bids were, but this is a great price from someone who we just worked with. We went 50-50 on the project over here at Loveland Stage, redoing their apron. And if you want to see how good of quality work. So we're really excited about this project. This will put us fresh and ready to go when the new gazebo gets in. It'll all be mounted and bolted. The electric will come up and it'll all work. And as we were talking about earlier, we were concentrating a lot of our efforts in this bit on the east side. If you recall, you authorized me to submit an application to begin tying all this together. So the city submitted a grant application, June-ish, I believe, for a connection that will go from right up to where the Harrison Street project is going to be coming through, down around the gazebo, around our future seating, all the way to all the way towards the restroom. So that's part of the master plan that we can do now. So hopefully we'll find out in pretty soon on whether or not that was funded. So I think that people are really going to like this gazebo. And remember, don't forget, this is 24 feet. This is, forget what you think about with the old gazebo, get it out of your mind. It's 3 times that size in footprint. It is really getting to talk to the bands on Sundays when you hand them the water and do the key. They're excited because those smaller concerts, I got a guy who's got him and a buddy and they do guitars. They would come down and play on a Saturday for free because this thought of just being down there. I know it's hokey, but I think it helps us get town. I think it gets us a little bit of that Austin feel that I think this will allow there to be more music going on down there. So we're pretty excited about this project. So for the funding on this, we'll probably just go ahead and tap into some of the grant funding we already have because it can be used for the gazebo, it can be used for the foundation, and that's a 75-25 match. So we'll probably, just so they know we're still alive and we're starting to draw that money, that's how this will be funded. And I believe he's planning to start ASAP. So.
All right. Any comments or questions?
Just a real quick comment. 24 feet, if you look at the dais here, if you finish this all the way around, that's probably about the size.
Oh, it's something.
Yeah.
I asked Chief Huber, I said, don't you think that's something? He goes, why would you build it any smaller? So, no, I think it's going to be beautiful. And if you recall, it's a white and an off-gray roof design. We're not that standard. Everyone's got to have a green metal roof and all that. It's nothing like that. And if you also recall, we included all that interior as custom wood inside up in the whatever you call it, whatever, the ceiling part of that part. Yeah. This is not something from a catalog. So I think it's really going to be impressive.
All right. Anyone else? Yes, Mr. Bateman.
Just sort of a piggyback from the previous 2 business items. Just a question about, you mentioned like ADA accessibility under the gazebo. Where is that recommended onto the bike trail? Like, is that just right there at the Mr. Red and the Adirondacks? Is that where?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the stairway is positioned such that access to the bike trail from an ADA is both at the Harrison intersection or at the bike trail. If you recall at the bike trail, and this is really why these sidewalks would even help even more so. If you recall, it's a sidewalk by Mr. Red. There's the truncated domes. That's the handicap access from that point. So to put a handicap ramp from Railroad down there wouldn't have been feasible. But we have the required distance on both sides of it. That's why we positioned it. If you recall, at one point we were actually looking at doing 2 stairways, and it just seemed like overkill.
Okay, thank you.
Right, anyone else? Vice Mayor?
Just a quick question. Once the concrete is poured, what will be the time between the gazebo actually being erected on it?
We're hoping early November, the gazebo, we get updates. There's 2 big park projects we're waiting. If you recall, you approved a brand new place up in Phillips. We haven't got that installed yet either because we're just waiting. You ordered them, but we haven't. So we anticipate right now, because it's the same vendor, we anticipate both arriving at about the same time. Brand new place set in Phillips and this gazebo. Because that's what you paid for also, is the installation. Thank you.
Right, anyone else? Yes.
Is there a set of specifications and drawings that this bid is based off of, or is it just based off of?
It's based on the site plan that Lynn Zook put together.
Okay.
Yeah, Lynn. The fear was that we were going to start the first component of the master plan. This is basically what we used and she met with each of the contractors, and Corey and Cindy walked with them. My biggest concern was right off the bat, I would put the gazebo in the wrong place, and then everything else wouldn't match up. So it was highly recommended that we would go back to Lynn. It was a moderate, minimal fee, and have her design it, make sure our ADA access is complete, and literally does where you're putting it match up with everything else. So that's what it's based upon, is Lynn.
Okay. Well, the reason why I asked is just the bid doesn't seem to reference any drawings. It just says we will do these things.
He sort of just included this with it.
And you know, obviously the longevity of the project and that kind of thing. Concrete flat work is something that is prone to problems if not properly done. So that's the reason why I was asking if there were specifications or something that he was doing this to.
Right. He based it on the drawings and the site visits with Corey and Cindy.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Read the resolution, please.
Resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Finer Lawn and Landscaping for the installation of a foundation for the Nesbitt Park Gazebo project.
Any comment on the resolution? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Resolution 93 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mrs. Clark?
For the next piece of legislation, the city contracts with the Walter Drain Company to update our code of ordinances. They take the legislation adopted by city council and integrate that into our code books. They also update our code books with all of the Ohio laws that comply. So you'll see in the ordinance there's reference to traffic code and to general offenses code and fire prevention code as well. So this ordinance will allow us to move forward with the supplement pages to our code book. It's written as an emergency because all the legislation has already been adopted by the city, so it just moves the project along a little quicker.
All right. Any questions or comments? All right. Read the ordinance, please.
Ordinance to approve current replacement pages to the Loveland codified ordinances and declaring an emergency.
All right. Any comments on the ordinance? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
It's okay.
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Ordinance 94 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Kennedy?
So your Law and Ordinance Committee, which included Vice Mayor Phelps and Mr. Braun and Corey and I on that committee, we met in July, August, and September to look at how to regulate. And it's important that you don't say ban because we're not banning, but how to regulate low-speed micro-mobility devices, which in a long, short word is scooters, e-scooters. And it was really important, and Todd was in there. And first of all, that's a lot of big brains in that room. And they really dissected this over and over and came up with something that really focused on our only concern, which is the e-scooters. and how they could potentially come into the community and impact ADA pedestrian movement, impact regular pedestrian movement. They just wouldn't fit in this downtown district. So the committee directed staff to reach out to ODNR to make sure that we wouldn't be doing anything in conflict with any existing ODNR rules regarding micromobility devices. Currently, there's pretty much open season. They don't really have any regulations except any device that would exceed their basic speed limit. So we circled back, and then we began the discussion of what is becoming even more and more popular. And again, getting to be down here, we see them a lot, which is the e-assist bikes. They have become all the rage because by all accounts, they look like a bike. They make you sort of super peddler, like the $1 Million Man when you're doing it. These are completely different than e-scooters. Why? Because they're privately owned. They're not rented. They're not cheap. They have taken, I think, what pickleball has done for older people in terms of that sport. I think e-assist has really opened the door for some older adults to be on the bike trail. And by no means did the city want to in any way, shape, or form discourage that. I would anticipate the bike rental place in town may soon be renting them, because they are really something. And so at the end of the day, it went from how do we ban them to how do we regulate them. And the primary reason I'm saying regulate them rather than ban is because there's very specific provisions in the legislation that says that this does not include anything as permitted by the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. And it also says electric assist bicycles, meaning a bicycle, blah, blah, blah. An electric assist bicycle shall not be considered an LSMD, meaning that ain't included. Do what you want. Enjoy them. They're wonderful for this community. And the message is that this isn't anti anything except e-scooters, which would be rented, left haphazardly down there. We've had no applications. We've had no requests. Even take that a step farther, in a healthy debate between Corey and Joe, which is something to sit and watch. Corey made an argument that you could probably argue that a typical bicycle could technically be classified as a low-speed micro mobility device. So 37601B is a Corey addendum, just to prove even more so this has nothing to do with bikes. It's just about scooters. So I think it's a good legislation. I think Councilmember Phelps may want to add some items in there. But all in all, I think it really served what the goal was for the committee. And I think they handed you a great product over 3 meetings. And I will say hats off to Officer Jake Salmon, who attended the 3rd meeting just to be there to answer some questions that they may have. He was wholeheartedly agreed that we don't want those things in this community. We don't want e-scooters down here. That's not a good thing. So I don't know, Mr. Phelps.
No, thank you, Mr. Kennedy. There's communities that have taken steps like this besides our own. I read recently where cities have likewise taken steps. I think Cleveland's banning them altogether, the scooters, that is. And I work downtown Cincinnati. I'm sure everybody's been downtown Cincinnati. You see them just kind of left in the middle of sidewalks, or they're not pretty to see, especially in the nighttime. So I think what we've done here is protects the city and the pedestrians by not allowing them to be downtown streets and be on downtown streets. And yet I think at one point we were thinking, gosh, maybe we should ban or do something to regulate, it's the better word, the bicycles that are electric assist. But one piece of information we got in our committee was that no, the ODNR allows those to be on bike trail. So we didn't want to run afoul of that. And so I think we put our minds together and came up with, I think, the proper legislation for the moment as it addresses those issues. We're currently, just as an update, Law and Ordinance is also looking at golf carts and small trucks that are like the Gators, and we'll probably be back in front of you on that in the next few weeks. So thanks.
All right. Any comments or questions? Mr. Hart?
I want to commend the law for going after this. It's going to Mr. Kennedy also. This is something that I think that while it hasn't shown up here yet, and moving towards the first things like that, much better to be on the front end of something like this, keeping it from becoming a problem. Rather, attacking on the back end makes a ton more sense to get out in front and set a precedent on things like that down here.
Mr. Bateman?
Yeah, I was just going to comment just as more anecdotally. I was sitting maybe a few months ago and saw someone on a electric skateboard. So that was a new one. I hadn't seen that before, going up the hill at 20 miles an hour. So I'm sure that would be defined within or would fall under the definition of a low-speed micro-mobility device.
It's like the Back to the Future hoverboard.
Yeah, I would never see it. And I agree from the look and feel and a lot of what the memo indicates in terms of the rentals and all of that. But certainly, I know some friends that have used the scooters at a night out downtown Cincinnati and have gotten injured. And so this is also a good rule of thumb to sort of protect those that might not be protecting themselves when they're using these devices. So again, appreciate the thoughtful nature of this from law and ordinance, and again, I think the clear message that it's sending to our community. So kudos to everybody involved.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. This is a first reading only. I'm going to go ahead and read the ordinance.
Ordinance creating Chapter 376 of the Loveland Code of Ordinances regulating the use of certain low-speed micromobility devices on public streets, highways, sidewalks, shared use paths, and bicycle-exclusive roadways within the city of Loveland.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have an item that has been added to the agenda. So first, we need a motion to amend the agenda to consider 13D.
I'll move to amend the agenda to consider 13D zoning, wholesale warehousing, and retail warehousing users.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Mr. Wright?
Thank you, Mayor. Before this evening, we have an emergency ordinance to establish a 180-day moratorium on the acceptance of all applications or issuance of permits for wholesale warehousing and retail warehousing, and declaring an emergency in that regard within any zoning district in the city. And by way of background, Chapter 1156 of our zoning code is our Bible. It is how we where we put uses throughout the city, how those uses impact other uses. And with that, they're regulated principally permitted accessory uses, conditional uses, special exceptions. And the definitions for retail warehousing, wholesale warehousing are fairly expansive. The primary location for these right now is in the light industrial district. The issue is, and the Planning and Zoning Commission really dove into this significantly as part of looking at recreational uses. What are the most appropriate uses in the light industrial district? And the light industrial district specifically is our Commerce Park. And so for that is a job creation engine for the city. That's an economic development engine for the city. The issue with retail warehousing and wholesale warehousing is they usually are placeholder uses where it's an opportunity to just fill a space, collect some rent. They don't generate any jobs. They take up a lot of square footage, and they have adverse impacts with regard to freight and potential impacts to other uses. So why are we looking at this right now? Well, interestingly, the Planning and Zoning Commission initiated the zoning text amendment, and we'll have a public hearing in October. We're already in September. Wow. In October, they're going to have a public hearing to consider this initiated text amendment, which really addresses the light industrial district and recreational uses and wholesale and retail warehousing. So with this, I believe it's appropriate to recommend to do this so we let this process play out, to let the text amendment process play out, and so that there's ample engagement for the public hearing, consideration, the commission to review it, and then ultimately that'll be forwarded to council as part of that. So with that, this moratorium would establish a 180-day 180-day period where we would not accept the applications for retail warehousing, wholesale warehousing in any district in the city while that process plays out. The other thing I would point out, aside from the text amendment already being initiated and in process, the city, I'm working with Mr. Kennedy, plan to bring final budget that includes $75,000 for 2023 to start the zoning code rewrite on that. And that'll take a significant bite out of that. I don't know that it'll be the full rewrite because it's a lot of code, but it'll get us a long way toward that. And that addressing the uses, modernizing our use tables, modernizing what uses are allowed, where they're allowed, and keeping in consistent with the comprehensive plan and all the work that the committee did is going to be all part of that work. So I think that the timing is sort of the timing for this is now, and we have to. I would respectfully request that council adopt the ordinance and declare an emergency.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All right, we'll go ahead and read the ordinance.
Ordinance establishing a 180-day moratorium on the acceptance of all applications and issuance of any permits for any type of wholesale warehousing use or retail warehousing use within any zoning district established within the city and declaring an emergency.
Any comment on the ordinance? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mayor Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Ordinance 95 is adopted by a vote of 7-0.
Mr. Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. This is just a brief bid update on the groundwater remediation project on the Chestnut Street property. So, as I indicated earlier, we bid both projects currently with the goal to try and get contracts on both of them. Fortunately, we were able to get a lot of bids for task order 2. We did not receive a lot of bids for task order 3, and the bid packet had to be rejected because the bid guarantee was not included as part of the bid. And so, as everybody here is aware, the integrity of the public bidding process is paramount to that. And so, with that rejection, we immediately took steps to rebid the project with the hopes of getting additional bids. So that's where we are on that. The bid opening is on September 23rd, and we chose a Friday instead of a Wednesday. Hope we get them a couple more days so they can perfect their documents. We did have a pre-bid, a non-mandatory pre-bid question and answer session this morning, and hopefully we get bids for the project that we can advance that component. So that's where we are.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Blair.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Wright, is it nobody wants to bid on it because there's too many unknowns?
I don't know that it's that. It's much more specialized than the site cleanup and the debris removal. There's a few firms in the Midwest that do this, and everybody has a different methodology that they want to approach, and I think a lot of these firms are accustomed to being in a private sector because we have to remember with Chestnut, we were a public entity that's taking this action to abate this, whereas normally a lot of these brownfield remediation projects are usually done by private sector parties, but we're in a unique position because the city owns that property. And so with that, I don't think a lot of them are accustomed to a competitive bid process. Some of them do work for Department of Defense. Some of them do work for pick a big state agency, and every state is different with regard to the competitive bidding process. So,
but you feel confident that we'll get a bid.
I hope we get
that we can use.
Actually, I believe we received a bid today, sealed. It's in the finance office, and it will remain sealed until the bid opening. So we have at least one. So I hope we get a couple more.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, any other questions, comments? Mrs. Clark?
So looking ahead at the City Council meeting schedule for the rest of the year, a couple of items came to our attention. The first being that in November, our first meeting falls on election, November 8th, on election day, excuse me. Council Rule 2 states that City Council holds regular meetings on the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month or as such other time or places council shall determine. And we're proposing that City Council reschedule the November 8th meeting, Monday, November 7th, at the same time, 7 p.m. Also, looking to December, and Council is scheduled to meet on December 13th and December 27th. Section 205 of the Loveland Charter allows the city to deviate from the regular meeting schedule and hold one meeting in December if approved by at least 5 members of City Council. So we're also proposing that the December 27th meeting be canceled and only one meeting be held on December 13th at 7 p.m.
All right, any questions or comments regarding the proposals? Mr. Braun, do you care if this is done as one motion?
I'm fine with that.
All right, would someone care to make a motion consistent with the recommendations?
So moved.
I
Or
think
do you
we
need
to
it
say-
more?
Probably need to say what they are. So we need
Okay.
a motion to reschedule the November 8th
Right.
meeting to Monday, November 7th at 7, and a motion to forego the second meeting in December on the 27th and only hold a meeting on December 13th at 7. So moved.
So moved.
So moved by
Yep.
Mr. Ori. Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Yes.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yep.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mr. Ori.
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 7 to 0.
All right, any comments on the building and zoning report or any of the committee minutes? All right, upcoming events. Homerama continues this week and will wrap up on Sunday. Hours are Monday through Thursday, 4 to 9 p.m., Friday through Sunday, noon to 9 p.m. Saturday, September 17th, the City of Loveland and BRS Insurance present Cats and Dogs, The Revenge of Kitty Galore, which is rated PG. This event will be held at Phillips Park, which is on Rich Road. Pre-movie activities begin at 6 p.m. and the movie begins at 8 p.m. All ages are welcome, free admission for parking. City's final concert in the park will be held this Sunday from 6 to 8 p.m. at Nisbet Park. Tom the Torpedoes will play the music of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I think at the last concert there were, I don't know, tried to do a little bit of counting, and I would say between 400 and 500 people were at that concert. But plenty of room for everybody. It was crazy how well attended it was. So this weekend looks wonderful as far as weather. So hopefully people will come out for these. Anybody else have any other announcements, comments? Can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Or second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mayor Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yep.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mr. Ori,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps.
Yes.
Carries.
Good morning.